60 Minutes Overtime.
This week on 60 Minutes, we were invited to join a group of veterans who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder on a psychedelic retreat that they hoped would finally help ease their pain. To qualify for this retreat, which was organized by this nonprofit group, Heroic Hearts Project, the vets had to have combat-related trauma.
So I found other ways to cope with it, and at 13 I started doing drugs.
But when we got there, we realized that for many of these vets, their struggles started long before their service.
Everybody here has been in the military, but almost everybody here has experienced trauma going back to their childhoods.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's certainly the case for you.
Absolutely.
At the retreat on the west coast of Mexico, we met Michael Giardina. He's a Navy veteran. He told us that he and his siblings grew up with an emotionally abusive father.
He was very emotionally abusive to us, and you'd kind of explode and yell and scream.
Was he in the military?
He was also an undercover narcotics officer, so he had seen a lot of stuff, and I don't think he knew how to deal with it.
As a young teenager, Giardina turned to drugs to cope with the chaos at home, but at 20, he decided he'd had enough, and he joined the Navy.
I was told often, like, hey, you're doing great, and went from E2 to E5 very quickly, and wearing the uniform made me feel really proud about myself.
It was a family.
It was a family, yeah. The transition was brutal. What do I do in the civilian world? And you're in this little bubble when you're in the military.
After he got home, his father killed himself in 2009. Giardina found his body. He told us he emotionally shut down afterward. Just months before the retreat, his younger sister died by suicide.
My sister and I were very similar people. I think she was just in a lot of pain. And I've definitely had the thoughts of this pain has to end, and there's only one way I can get this pain to end.
You've thought about killing yourself?
Yeah.
What are you hoping to get out of this?
Peace, like freedom.
The group drank tea made with ground-up mushrooms that contained the psychoactive compound psilocybin. For Giardina, the experience was intense.
I went somewhere very dark right away. Very dark. I was terrified.
During the ceremony, he raised his hand for help.
Trying to figure out what was going on, and that's when, my hand started moving a lot, my foot. The interesting part is just needed someone to say it's okay.
And once someone came over and held your hand and said it's okay, that helped you?
It helped, yeah. I'm no professional, but I could imagine that it's just a lot of stuff from childhood trauma and all the way up that I just needed to let go and let someone just say it's okay to let go.
The VA is now conducting 9 clinical trials using MDMA and psilocybin to treat PTSD, depression, and addiction.
We're going to study.
In December, when we spoke to its top doctor, Sharif El-Nahal, he was enthusiastic about their potential.
The trauma they've accumulated, not just from their military experience, but even since childhood, is brought back. They're able to deal with it during these therapy sessions with psychedelics, and they actually have lasting long-term benefit because we think this therapy and these drugs actually get to the root cause of the trauma.
Do you see that a lot with the veterans that have PTSD?
So in a protocol we did out of the Bronx VA, the chief scientist, Dr. Rachel Yehuda, told me that the majority of veterans in that cohort actually surfaced trauma way before their military service, from childhood, could have been abuse, sexual abuse even in some cases, that was brought out and dealt with during this therapy. Trauma that had nothing to do with what they were experiencing in the military. And a lot of times people end up joining the military in part because of trauma beforehand.
Even if the clinical trials are successful, it'll be years before the VA could prescribe either MDMA or psilocybin for its patients.
It's interesting to me how much this is about grief that's been buried for a very long time. This is a lifetime of trauma and grief that you are now trying to bravely face.
It was a lot harder than I expected, a lot darker in the beginning. But I kept coming back to this, man, what a beautiful experience I'm having right now. I'm learning so much, and I'm finally able to deal with these things.
Thank you.